Cheers,
Cheers. Welcome to the podcast.
bro. I appreciate the invitation to join you.
Yeah, so I think just tell me, I think about your research. I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is what can we learn about our past hominids? What can that teach us about who we are today, and what do we know about them?
Sure. So I began my research career in the late aughts, I guess they're referred to now, in like 2007, 2008. And I've always been fascinated by endless forms most beautiful, Darwin's description of life on Earth. And when you drill down even into specific populations within species, you can see a lot of anatomical variation. You can see a lot of behavioral variation, especially in animals that are behaviorally complex like primates and certainly humans.
Yeah.
And as opposed to behaviorally simple organisms, when we were in Rocky over the weekend watching a species of bird that is not particularly bright. And, just watching it and then comparing it to a raven, and the raven was watching this other bird too, and the raven's probably thinking the same thing I am, like, what is that dummy doing? But anyway, sorry, I digress. And a lot of our understanding at the time of human evolution utilized what I considered fairly limited samples from fairly limited populations. And this was not just me making this recognition. I mean, this is acknowledged as a field-wide issue within biological anthropology, is that, when you derive your idea of what normal variation is from scores, tens, 20s of individuals that are mostly from the same time period and mostly from the same place, you don't really get a great understanding of what normal variation is. And so that colors all of your interpretations of fossils from our evolutionary past. And so what I did was utilized a lot of medical imaging, so x-rays, to get a better understanding of what normal variation might entail, because it's not just skeletons. You can capture living anatomy in the sense that it preserves the ligaments, tendons, muscles, contributions, not just bones, to a human structure. And the x-rays are taken of living people, so that's living anatomy. And obviously there's a reduction of information from a flesh and blood creature down to a two-dimensional image, but it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think in many ways it's better than skeletons that are not alive. And so using, instead of tens and 20s of samples, I was able to use hundreds of samples and get a somewhat more variable, diverse range of what normal distributions are. And when I first started looking, I was struck by the fact that no one would have ever mistake a 4 or 5 million year old human skull for a living human skull, because the brain has increased threefold at a minimum, and the teeth have gotten much smaller. The musculature has gotten much less robust. And if you look at a modern human skull, it's like there's an enormous brain case for an enormous brain and little teeny jaws for little teeny tiny teeth.
Yeah, we're not hunting anymore.
We're
eating. They're not weapons. Our
right,
teeth aren't weapons anymore.
Teeth aren't weapons, and most other primates, big canines, are used as threat displays, and so they're an intimidating factor. They can be used as weapons as a last resort, but humans have other ways of being threatening.
Yes,
we
have nuclear
swords.
weapons. Yeah, so a little stronger than teeth.
And before swords and nuclear weapons, we had things like spears and had sharp sticks. So anyway, looking at how certain parts of the human body seem to have evolved massive amounts, and to the point where no one would ever confuse the ancient specimens from the early specimens. But there are other parts of the body that seem to have not evolved as much. And so, I was specifically interested in looking at lower limbs, because lower limbs are the primary mover of bipedal locomotion, which of course is critically important in human evolution and is very unusual for an animal. We're the only habitually bipedal primate. And you make arguments about other mammals being sort of bipedal.
They can, but they
Yeah, but they're not
aren't.
really, and they're not good at it.
Yeah.
We're good at it.
Yeah.
So looking at feet, I was just struck by some of the most ancient feet. You probably wouldn't necessarily mistake them for living people feet because they're generally a lot smaller, and they're clearly adult because the growth plates have fused. But just looking at these large samples of living humans and the variation of things that are produced not only by hard tissue but by soft tissue, like the magnitude of the arch of the foot, like how abducted the big toe is, how far the big toe sticks apart from the second toe. So in all of the other apes, the big toe is fully opposable, like our thumbs on our hands are.
Interesting.
But in humans, the big toe is not opposable, and there is a variation in how far it sticks out from the rest of the toes. And just looking at some of these characters that were produced by not just bones, but by soft tissues, looking at really large sample sizes and finding that you can take fossils that are many millions of years old that are from the foot, and they fall within the range of variation of living people. So my ultimately, the theory that I was working on testing in my different dissertation chapters is the idea that when an anatomical structure, or when a piece of human anatomy is complex, so like a hand has a lot of moving parts in it, a foot has a lot of moving parts in it, whereas say like a forearm just has 2 bones in it, and there's a lot of muscles, but most of those muscles are running down into the hand, and they're doing stuff in the hand. There's only a few of them that are actually staying in the forearm and doing forearm things like pronation and supination.
Yeah.
Even though there's within the forearm, you can make an argument they're really there to move hands.
Yeah, yeah.
And the upper arm is just got 1 bone in it, and it's the muscles are not as complicated as you see in a hand, and a arm and a forearm are massively larger, but there's not as much anatomy in there.
Yeah.
When I teach the first year medical students, I always emphasize you spend a ton of time on the shoulder, a little bit of time on the arm and forearm, and a ton of time on the wrist and the hand. And that, to an extent, matches what clinicians see in practice, is that people injure their shoulders and their hands all the time.
That makes sense.
Elbows get injured too, but aside from lacerations and trauma, arms and forearms don't get injured from repetitive use.
Yeah, I see a lot of Popeye's elbow, olecranon bursitis. That's always kind of funny to see.
Yeah.
It looks a little ridiculous.
Yep. That's a classic overuse syndrome. So the theory again is that when you have a anatomically complex structure, it's difficult for evolution to modify with positive selection and selecting for a specific character. And so when you look at human feet, there's a lot of characters that have been the same for millions of years. And it seems that over the course of my research career of the last 20 years, looking at things like Neanderthals is more modern. It's very difficult to distinguish Neanderthal feet from modern human feet, even though you could tell the rest of the skeleton apart pretty straightforward. I was fortunate to be involved in the initial work and ongoing work in the extinct hominin Homo naledi that was found in South Africa in 2013. Sorry, it took me a moment.
Yeah.
And looking at that and seeing, that there's a lot of the anatomy of the foot and the leg is very human-like, but then you get some parts that are not particularly human-like. And so I think it's interesting to see which parts of our anatomy still are pretty susceptible to injury. Knees are... That's a loud bike. Knees are susceptible to injury in ways that the rest of the lower limb sort of aren't, probably because of constraints on how much you can actually stabilize the knee. But one of the things that we discovered with Homo naledi is that it has really long limbs, in the sense that the femur and especially the tibia fibula are longer relative like a human. And so we assume that facilitated efficient bipedal locomotion. But the joints of the ankle, and especially the joints of the knee and the hip, are pretty small. And so one of the things that a lot of people have been working on over the last 20, 30 years is the idea that large joints are safer because it's just more contact area. You can distribute repetitive loads, same force going through a larger, or same force going through a larger area is less pressure per unit.
Yeah.
Sorry, it takes me a minute.
Physics.
Yeah, it's the physics. I got to sit down and I do that stuff by hand.
So we can look at the old, extinct hominids
Right.
and start to extrapolate. These are the things that we have. These are the things that they had. Maybe these things were beneficial for us because if we had the bigger joints, the stronger joints, we had more of a advantageous position.
Better resistant to repetitive wear, probably better stamina, better endurance. Most living people who are in decent shape can walk all day. Running is a different issue.
Yeah.
But walking for humans is generally pretty straightforward and pretty easy. And there's been a number of researchers that have pointed out that one of the things that makes human walking and human endurance special is the fact that we can do it in the heat of the day. And so, you and I go to Rocky Mountain National Park, or when people visit the nature parks and preserves and the wilds in Africa, is one of the things you notice is that most of the big animals take a lot of time off.
Take
during
some
the
siestas during the day.
They take siesta in the heat of the day, and humans do that too, where it's particularly hot.
Yeah. Well, I remember watching on Planet Earth the kangaroos would get under any tree that they could find and dig under the dirt because the dirt was cooler. And that's because we can sweat, right?
And they did they show the kangaroos licking their forearms?
That too, as well.
Yeah, that's an adaptation that put moisture via saliva on their forearms, and then that's evaporative cooling. Well, we don't have to do that because we can sweat really effectively. So one of the things that is weird about humans is that we're very, very thirsty. And one of the reasons why we have to drink a lot of water is that we lose a lot of it through evaporative cooling. Other animals, it's astonishing how long they can go without water. And I've chatted with people, first-time owners of different types of pets, and they're like, he's not drinking enough. She's not drinking enough. And it's like, it's a tortoise. It doesn't need to drink at all. As long as you continue to feed it good, fresh vegetables and fruits, it will never need to drink.
Yeah.
So, human ability to be able to be out and active during the daytime gives us an advantage, not only as predators, because we're able to exhaust prey in certain circumstances. It also gives us an advantage as potential prey. Humans don't have to worry about too many different types of predators, especially when there's a bunch of us in a group together, and we got even the most earliest tools like spears and firebrands and rocks and things like that. But you really don't have to worry about big cats at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
No, especially not nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you see attacks, big cat attacks on humans, whether it's in Africa or here in the United States, like there's a fortunate incident in Olympic National Park recently where a cougar attacked a 4-year-old. There's often something wrong with that cat, and there's something that is wrong with it that has made it desperate enough to try to attack people. Yeah. Because, generally speaking, we're actually fairly dangerous, again, especially in a group, but we are also slow. And if the cat is able to get us,
there's not much we can do.
There's not much we can do about it once they close that distance, and there's only one of us. So I think that it's really interesting to look at how these structures that seem to be more robust to injury kind of evolved piecemeal over the course of human evolution. And a lot of the focus in the past has been on human beings and our ability to move efficiently and saving energy, which I think is certainly important. I mean, you don't want to be wasteful, but humans generally don't live on a razor's edge in terms of their energy budget and in terms of speed. The joke is like, if you're running away from a big cat, you're already done. You've already lost. Yeah. And so I think that it's a really ripe area for research, and wouldn't consider myself a leader, but I've been contributing to more and more literature over the last 20 years looking at joint safety. and making sure that our joints hold up to repeated use
Yeah.
is potentially a driving force in evolution for us as well.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it reveals some kind of survivorship bias, because if we looked at today, it's like, okay, our hips, our knees, our shoulders, these are the things that go. But then if we look at previous hominids, we might say, oh, actually, the things that caused them to go extinct weren't the knees or shoulders or whatever. It was maybe the other stuff.
Right. And so a lot of these different types of injuries are only often or more frequently show up in old age and people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And before, many tens of thousands of years ago, 100, 200,000 years ago, there's a great paper written by Sang-Hee Lee at UC Riverside and Rachel Kaspari, who at the time was at Michigan, looking at the OI ratio, old to young, and just looking at when in human evolution do you start to see large amounts of really old people. And I cannot for the life of me remember when we started seeing that, but I think it was in the 100,000 year, 200,000 year ago range. And
what do you think was the driving force behind that?
Probably just better people being safer, being smarter, being being better at exploiting their environments, living in bigger groups. And so, you see a lot of these old people that lived, actually, when I say old people, they were 50, 40, 60.
Yeah.
They've got lots of injuries. There's a classic specimens where there's an arm that's been amputated mid-humerus, and it looks pretty clear like they hacked that arm off, and then it just, the unfortunate individual just was missing their arm for the rest of their life.
Kept going.
Kept on trucking, and it's hard to do that if you're on your own. It's easier to do that if you're part of a big group, and maybe you aren't as good a hunter anymore, but you remember 20 years ago that when times were tough, there was still water available. 3 days trek over those mountains over there, and then everybody in the group recognizes that you're valuable. Probably also start to see ideas about human morality and human compassion, and that you at least should try to make an effort to help people out, regardless of whether they can immediately do something for you. Helping people out without just a quid pro quo.
Yeah.
But that gets into different types of cognitive and sociocultural research that I am not an expert in by any means.
Yeah.
I know those people, and I text them when I need to know answers.
Yeah. It seems like an incredibly complicated field. It's one thing figuring out the anatomy or the physical machinery, but it's another thing being like, okay, what was their culture like? How did they develop their morals?
Absolutely.
How did they act?
Yeah, that's traditionally in the United States, you got an anthropology department, and 120, 100 and some years ago, it worked out really well, but it's gotten to the point where, the geneticists are so specialized, it's hard to talk to them if you're a gross anatomist, and it's hard for folks who do archaeology to chat with each other, sometimes with each other, because they're working on such disparate time periods, disparate cultural complexities, and it's sometimes a struggle to chat with people who are outside of your own special niche within biological or within anthropology, and then even within the subfields, biological, cultural anthropology, archaeology themselves. But
yeah, that seems to be just kind of a general trend, specialization.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's super tricky because it is hard to bridge the gap there when your job that you do is something that only a few people can actually understand.
Yeah, and a lot of science these days, and for the past 30, 40 years, certainly the entirety of my career for the last 20 years, is oftentimes we don't make really astonishing discoveries that push one discipline deeper. We make connections between disciplines that help them both. And so it's very collaborative, and just knowing people and having an idea of something that can involve many people is oftentimes a pretty productive way to push those boundaries of knowledge forward and get them papers published.
Yes, exactly. It does have me wonder though, like, are we kind of past the age of breakthrough discoveries in science? Like
No.
Huge, theory of relativity, splitting the nucleus. I mean, I think physics because it's kind of cool, but, other fields as well, biology.
I think that, at this point, we're not going to disprove the germ theory of disease. I mean, like, that's settled.
Yeah.
And despite certain folks' efforts to go back to the miasma theory of illness. The bottom line is that microorganisms are capable of causing disease, and when you do things like wash your hands,
It helps.
it's helpful. And when you do things like take your urine and feces and put them into a separate water system and then clean them before you put them out into the
Very
environment.
good. Very helpful.
Yeah, who'd have thought? I think that a lot of those types of breakthroughs are, those are in the past, but we still discover new stuff all the time. I mean, the ancient human species Homo naledi was found 10 years ago, and has it completely changed the way we think about human evolution? Well, if you're writing clickbait headlines for garbage
Science Today,
garbage
or
content
whatever.
on the internet, yeah, but for the rest of us, it hasn't changed. It's changed our understanding. It hasn't thrown everything out, and so I think that those types of discoveries are going to continue to get made.
Yeah.
There's been lots of interesting developments in all sorts of biomedical related fields, even within the practice of my career. And a number of things that people used to teach 10, 15 years ago to first year medical students, we don't teach as much anymore because we teach other stuff instead.
Yeah.
So
it is cool. I think a lot of you see some of the discoveries coming out like slowly, but I feel like periodically, not even that periodically, but every couple of weeks, I'll hear about some new medical thing where I'm like, oh, geez, I did not even know that existed, and that sounds super, super cool.
absolutely,
like a medication or a surgery or something like that. I feel like the cool stuff in that regard just doesn't get talked about as much. It's always the Ozempics that get make the headlines. It's not the cure to the obscure disease that we thought couldn't be cured.
So what is it? Ozempic? What is it? A GLP-1 inhibitor? And
glucagon-like protein. So glucagon, some physiology. Glucagon raises your blood sugar. So it's a satiety hormone. It makes you feel full.
Yeah.
So
I mean, considering that one of the major, obesity and obesity-related diseases are such an enormous problem. No pun intended. I can say that because I am obese. Sorry, maybe edit that out or not. I don't care. Is such a pressing issue that affects so many people in developed societies. 20, 30 years ago, we looked at obesity as a failing of moral character, as a failing of willpower, and that people were fat because they just didn't have the willpower to stop eating. Well, 4 million years of evolution said fats are good. You need to consume them.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to, it's not even 4 million, it's as long as primates have existed. I mean, most animals in zoos and in captivity will eat themselves to the point where they get overweight. I mean, that's just because they have evolved to try to pack themselves with food, because food is typically a precarious resource.
Very scarce. So if you get it, load up on it.
So recognizing that this is, I think that it might not be the same as discovering the germ theory of disease, but having these intellectual paradigm shifts about how we approach these issues can be enormously fruitful. And so, looking at some of these GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic or whatever, have enormous promise for massive improvements in the health and well-being of a lot of different people. And I mean, I have an appointment set with my primary care doc coming up in the next couple of months, and I'm going to be talking to him about, do you think that this would be useful for me?
Yeah.
Because that last 25 pounds is proving extraordinarily problematic to get rid of.
It gets progressively more difficult.
Yeah. First 25 is a piece of cake, but it's tough when you live in Fort Collins and Odell's got the nitro IPA.
Well, that's the other thing too.
Easy drinking, low ABV beer for your beautiful summer afternoon.
Yeah, I think, the two sides of the spectrum with GLP-1 seem to be either all of us are perfectly agentic people where we can exact our will on everything. So just, lose the weight, bro. Yeah. And then on the other side, it's we have no agency. We're a pure product of our biology and environment. And then at that point, you have no free will, which is...
Both of these extremes are wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is in the middle.
Of course. And, in modern society, especially, in the United States, we have a lot of uh, how would you put it tactfully, evolutionarily minded, targeted uh, food
Yeah,
things.
absolutely.
You have a lot,
Yeah.
even down to the colors. You know, I remember
Yup.
hearing the reds, the yellows, the oranges are very poppy colors. So a lot of the foods that are addictive have those colors. Just these things that are very tailored. So
Where are all the blues?
exactly.
You know, where's all the blue food?
Hmm.
There's one. I
Yeah.
mean, but that's
Oh, this is more
a
green.
curiosity.
Yeah.
That's a curiosity. So there's that novelty effect on it. But yeah,
Mhm.
you very rarely see blue colored foods because blue is generally
Not edible.
it's not a color that, you know, primates broadly and humans specifically are really primed to cue in on. That's
Mhm.
why things are red, orange, yellow,
Mhm.
exactly,
Like fruits. I mean, that's
Yep.
probably where it comes from.
and
Yeah.
greens because of all the leaves
Yeah.
and
Meat.
Yep, yeah,
Um,
meat important too.
But yeah, it is interesting because it's taking this Western medicine has this issue with chronic things, but this seems like, you know, almost a quantum leap forward for treating chronic conditions, and it's really it's such an interesting, it's an endlessly interesting conversation for me because there's so many people are so opinionated, and there seems to be so many people who have this just problem with GLP-1s because it's like, well, that's cheating, and then there's just so many gradients of gray that it's hard to pin
Yeah, I mean,
exactly where they are.
it's, you know, but you could see these. I don't know. I tend to have a dim opinion of people who think that different types of health issues are moral failures and everything. And you know, the same people would be railing against the use of methadone to treat heroin addiction. Like, well, it's not great to be addicted to methadone, but it's a lot better than being addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
Or, you know, folks who are really critical of needle exchange programs, and it's like, yeah, it's not great that these folks are unfortunately addicted to injection drugs, but this is a whole lot safer than, you know, than the alternative. And
Mhm.
that has a long history within the United States. You know, a lot of the earliest, the food companies that you recognize, like General Mills and, you know, some of the other um, very well known food companies in the United States have their roots in, you know, like Puritanism and Quaker. You know, like Quaker Oats is literally
Quakers.
Quaker
Yeah.
is, you know, the Quaker Oats is this pure form of food, and it is devoid of any sort of tempting, you know,
Yeah, it's like
sugars
it's
or
the
this
most
or that.
bland.
But you
Yeah.
know, but it's healthy. I mean, it is
Yeah.
in moderation.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, the other thing too is the food companies. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the tobacco companies started putting their stock in the food companies when
Yep.
the FDA started really pushing
Yep.
the cigarette stuff back in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. And
Those
so,
guys know how to make an addictive product.
yeah,
So,
absolutely. But at the same time, I mean, you know, nicotine is a plant secondary compound that is at its core an insecticide. So tobacco produces nicotine because many bugs that then try to eat it die.
Mm.
And the doses that, you know, that kill a bug are a stimulant and have mild psychoactive effects on mammals. And so people recognized thousands of years ago that you can smoke tobacco leaves and it makes you feel good.
yeah.
Um, and then, you know, caffeine is the world's most widely used drug.
Yeah.
And caffeine is a plant secondary compound that evolved in a lot of different plants because it is a deterrent for different types of insect predation too.
Mm.
And you know, humans, caffeine generally makes us feel better.
Well, I mean, I know there's the whole theory in the Enlightenment that the Enlightenment happened because of caffeine, because they went from drinking this for their hydration to going to coffee bars.
Sure.
And if you go from being drunk all the time to being stimulated by caffeine, you're thinking a little bit clearer. And
I was going to say, yeah,
have some better ideas.
Ethanol is ultimately a sedative. It's a downer, and caffeine is ultimately, it's a stimulant. It's an upper. And
yeah,
I'd argue that, you know, the relaxing properties of ethanol have their role in the creative process every bit as much as the stimulating properties of caffeine.
I'm sure they had their share of beer as well in the Enlightenment with their caffeine.
There's all these different chemicals, and then there's companies that exist to exploit addictive behaviors and addictive personalities. I think it's very fascinating, the rise of seeing very clearly addictive social media
Oh boy.
algorithms is a very clear reflection of the fact that humans are hardwired and have evolved to be stimulated by new information that is oftentimes related to our own social groups, and that ultimately Meta is a company that the longer you keep scrolling, the more ads they show, the more money they make. And humans are also hardwired to react stronger to things that are off-putting than things that are calming.
Yeah.
And so that's why you see this extraordinarily manipulating, and I would argue very damaging to society, tendencies of these social media algorithms to push information to viewers that they know the viewer is going to react negatively to, because they're just going to keep scrolling because they keep getting that hit.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, I have some, because I totally agree. Social media taps it. In my pet theory with it is it taps just straight into your amygdala, and the reason that it keeps you on is because it makes you feel something.
Yep.
And we like feeling things, and the things that we feel most strongly are often negative emotions. We have far more words for negative emotions than strong or positive ones. Great negativity bias, plenty of evolutionary reasons for it. So it makes us feel these really negative things, which keeps us on, which is why we're seeing a lot of the negative, like political content. A lot of people have just like death videos on their feeds, or very sexualized content. A lot of stuff that just taps right into stuff that makes us feel very strongly. And the thing that I learned the other day that was just so like just the privacy implications are terrible. But everyone is wearing wearable technology now, things that track their heart rate, their pulse ox, their sleep, this, that, and the other. That data is not patient PHI. It's not like protected data. So they can sell that to the ad companies. So if you're scrolling through your phone and you see some stuff that pisses you off and it makes your heart rate go up, that data is sold to the company. They're like, okay, this thing made them heart rate go up. Show them more of that. This is how you keep
Jack Snyder. This is how you keep Zach Throckmorton scrolling.
Exactly. And just the fact that the wearables are there. The one that was just hilarious, 8 Sleep mattresses sponsor a lot of people, and it's a smart mattress pretty much. And these mattresses track the data. So your bed is tracking data and selling it to advertisers, pharmaceutical companies, social media companies. That's Ozempic is interesting, right? But at the end of the day, the things that are like damaging seem to be that avenue more.
Yeah, I mean, and they have insinuated themselves into every aspect of our lives. And so one of the things that I try to do is have as many days in the week as I can where I simply do not engage social media. And if I'm on the internet, it is to check my email, because I got to do that for my job. And that's one thing that, yes, I will continue to. Technology is useful. I'm not going to be a complete Luddite and throw this all out. But, it cracks me up. I put my phone down and I take it out of my pocket when I teach. And just the types of ads that I get after teaching different sorts of sessions. And we just finished up our reproduction and life cycle systems course. And of course, as part of that, we talk about penises and erections and erectile dysfunction. And that class was, I think, a month ago now, and I still get erectile dysfunction ads on it. And I'm just like, geez, it's like telling my phone, not yet. I mean, maybe in another 20. Sorry, that was too off color, but it's and then I talk to my medical students all the time about succeeding on USMLE Step 1. And so I get all these ads for resources for succeeding on Step 1. And I'm like, I already took Step 1. I get to tell you that I did not pass it. Did extraordinarily well in the anatomy content areas, and then fell off a cliff with everything else. And then, when I teach the undergrads in 345 and I start talking about the MCAT or getting into medical school, I get all those ads too. And it's just,
it's crazy because it's totally listening. Like I remember a couple of years ago, it was one of those things where, okay, are they really listening? Because I've had some weird things. Totally listening now. I feel like every week I have someone, we're having a conversation, and then they pull their phone out. They're like, see, we were just talking about that. And it's like, oh my gosh. Like the private, like cybersecurity is probably going to be I would hope it's going to be a very emerging, huge field in the next couple of years because people are starting to wise up to this sort of stuff.
There's a lot of privacy concerns. I mean, I don't really care about a machine listening and selling me ads. What I care about are things like, again, social media companies pushing negative content that riles people up.
Yeah, silos them,
destabilizes society because that's what sells ads. I mean, that to me, I mean, like, that's dangerous.
Oh, God.
When you talk about things like major breakthroughs in science, the ability to split an atom was pretty groundbreaking discovery that happened 80 some years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, I would make an argument that the United States historic and traditional enemies have been able to put this country at the weakest it's been in within my lifetime, at least, by manipulating these new technologies. And so, sometimes these new technologies go off with a bang, like a nuclear bomb. And all of a sudden, the United States and the Soviet Union are locked in a bipolar world. But some of these changes are more gradual. And I always think about Gutenberg inventing the printing press. You made a comment about, intellectual revolutions and the Renaissance and the rise of, an educated class of people in a society. Well, that doesn't happen without a printing press, but that was gradual. That took hundreds of years. That wasn't just decades, it was centuries. So,
yeah. The new technologies seem to be making us dumber, though. It's not like the printing press where suddenly we have access to books and universities and reading. It's we are just fed shit. And it feels like you're learning because you might be watching some educational stuff, but the issue is we have too much information nowadays, because you could technically learn whatever you wanted on the internet, but actually doing it and knowing what to learn and what is actually the right information is such a tricky business nowadays.
One of my favorite sayings about the internet is that the best thing about the internet is it gave everybody a voice, and the worst thing about the internet is it gave everyone a voice. And even still, you look at different points in the past before the rise of very accessible internet technologies. And I mean, there's just a big celebration down in Eastern Tennessee about the Scopes trial. I mean, you got to remember, it was illegal to teach evolution in large parts of the United States less than 100 years ago. And so when we say that these things are making us dumber, I don't know if these things make us dumber or smarter. There's always been plenty of dumb people. There's always been plenty of smart people.
That's true. It seems like it's...
they're more noticeable.
Yeah, it almost... The technology almost is increases the contrast. Like you're editing a picture. Yeah. It just makes the colors pop more. The bright's brighter, the dark's darker. You just see it more. And I think it's a lot of it is artificial, right? Because I think if you actually go out and have face-to-face interactions with people are pretty reasonable, pretty normal. You just talk to them.
I mean, this is where the phrases chronically online and terminally online come from.
Those are medicalizing how online you are, which I think is actually really fair.
And people were noticing rise of extremely addictive behaviors with the internet in the 90s, maybe even in the 80s. I don't know. I was not old enough in the 80s to be paying attention, but I mean, some of the earliest massively multiplayer online role-playing games, those were very addictive, and they continue to be for many people, very addictive. But it's culturally, it's hard to define. Well, what's addictive to the point of causing a problem versus a hobby that somebody's really, really into?
Yeah.
So,
or video games, it's a game. It's kind of like a sport. It's not really physical. Chess. But nobody's saying, you play too much chess. But people say you play too much Call of Duty. Are they that different? Maybe, maybe not. Call of Duty is certainly more addictive than chess. But yeah. I mean, my biggest worry with the addictive internet, obviously, is AI.
Sure.
I think AI is the amount of data, our data profiles online, they know what our preferences are.
Yep.
So just have AI make tailored stuff for you or for me that is exactly the kind of thing that it knows you'll want to watch.
Yeah, and that's that gets back to problematic behaviors like spending too much money on stuff you don't need.
Mm-hmm.
But Chuck Palahniuk was talking about that in Fight Club.
Mm.
You know, it's just, the book came out at this point, 30 some years ago, and the movie is also just as old.
Yeah.
You know, working jobs that we hate to go home and buy stuff we don't need.
Yeah.
So, and yeah,
with money, wasn't it? With money we don't have.
It's not that it's new. It's just that it is harder for people to not buy stuff. I mean, that's one of the things that why Amazon is so such a juggernaut, is they just make it easy.
Yeah,
makes it real easy.
Well, that's the other thing about that. I was talking about this with my girlfriend today. Like, it seems like everything that's produced nowadays is just slop. It's not very good. You have
it's not about quality, it's about quantity.
Exactly. It's about, will you like it in the moment? All the content on the internet, how is it going to make you engaged and keep your attention for this moment in time? And that's it. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to get anything. It's just, is it going to keep you here right now? The stuff you buy on Amazon, it's all cheaply made, not really meant to last. You'll get sick of it. A new trend will pop up. You'll buy the new trendy thing. Stuff just isn't made to last as much anymore. And if it does, you know, the camera, the microphones, whatever, it's a little bit more pricey and it's a little bit more prohibitive. Yeah.
It's beyond it. I mean, arguably a lot of these, the very high quality products that you can expect that if you take care of them will last for 10, 20 years are simply beyond the reach of the income of many Americans.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that camera cost as much money as what a lot of Americans make in a month. Mm-hmm. So, but, you take care of it, you expect that it's going to be able to do its job for 10, 15, even 20 years.
Yeah.
And if the camera won't, the lens will.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the cell phone cameras, we have those. Right. So people just aren't incentivized to buy that nice of stuff. Plus, you can just go get a cheap one anyways. Yep. And it's kind of sad because I've tried consolidating and minimalizing the things I have to high quality things that I know are going to last. I mean, it's really refreshing because I don't want anything. I don't need to buy anything. Like we were talking about before, like with the lenses, you have the lenses that you have, learn to use those as opposed to researching what's a good new, so fun new lens. You get it in the mail. You have the big dopamine, and then you get it.
Yep.
And that's it.
And the photos are not any better than the ones you were taking before because you've gotten to the point where what is it? Skill issue, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, it doesn't matter how fancy your equipment is. If you don't know how to compose a photograph, they're going to look like they ain't going to look good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big thing is getting out and doing the things or having the conversations as opposed to just like, so it's all very simulated. It feels like on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just, again, new content keeps people clicking on it. And I still remember the pivotal point when Facebook, back in its earliest days, sorted your timeline by chronology. And what that allowed you to do was to sign on to Facebook and scroll for 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. And then you've caught up on everything that all of your friends have posted in the last 3 days, which is the last time you used Facebook. And then there was this change where instead of doing by chronology, they started sorting it by other means. So like posts that had gotten more likes or posts that had done this, that, or the other. And that was the moment when it went towards being a truly addictive. This is no longer there to serve you information about your friends. It is now there to sell you ads.
Yeah, I think it was called the adpocalypse. Because YouTube, all of the social medias were the same way. You had subscribers, people you followed, people you were friends with. You'd see all their stuff first. And then if you wanted to branch out, there were other ways to do that. But now it's just all algorithmic, all to sell ads.
One of the most annoying things about the current I like Instagram because it's people generally, it's not like loaded political stuff, and you can make your feed, you can control your feed to show only stuff that you want from people you follow for now.
Yeah.
Who knows if that's going to change, but it's always suggesting, you might be interested in following this. You might be interested in following that. It's like, no.
Yeah.
I'm not. I try to keep my world small enough where I can actually keep track of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think you're probably a little bit more unique there because I think most people who use Instagram just use it very passively. They don't think about it. It's you scroll and you do just let the algorithm decide what is best for you. The issue though is that it's deciding what is best for your amygdala in a moment by moment basis.
It's
which
not deciding what's best for you. It's deciding what are we going to show him to keep him scrolling.
exactly, and those things, none of those things are going to be things that you're actually going to appreciate.
And I mean, and I'm on Reddit too, and
Yeah.
I post a lot of pictures to the Rocky Mountain National Park Reddit, and I watch the Fort Collins Reddit for news and updates and everything. But even that is constantly showing, information that it's like, this is all worthless. I don't care about any of this. And it's like, how many nonsense bullshit posts do I have to get through before I actually see something that I care about?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd just be like, man, I have been scrolling for 2-3 minutes and it hasn't shown me shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, put the phone down and then turn on a baseball game.
Yeah, the other
which
thing,
will also try to sell me ads.
Yep, ads. So many ads. The funny thing about Reddit too, I think, have you heard of dead internet theory?
Yes.
Yeah, where like
that's fascinating.
most of the stuff you see online is just bots talking to bots, and you're just kind of watching it from a third party. I feel like Reddit is really bad for that. I go on Reddit and there's so many like shit post comments.
Yep.
Where I read it and think, is this even a person?
A lot of times it's not.
Yeah, it's just so suspicious.
With the big ones like news, world news, Ukraine, Israel, anything that's kind of a hot button.
Yeah.
But I do think that when you get small enough communities like RMNPs, Rocky Mountain National Park, and there's not a ton of slop on that because there's not enough people. The machines don't have it targeted and don't care about it. It's secure because it's obscure.
Mm-hmm. Very supply and demandy.
Right.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time on Reddit lately, like doing medical school research.
Sure. Yeah.
It's very helpful for that, just getting people's viewpoints and opinions, I guess, on like medical school applications process.
Sure.
What's your kind of opinion on the state of affairs with like med school, med school's application, like what people should know about like what are some good, maybe big picture besides MCAT, GPA, like extracurriculars?
Yeah,
good things to consider.
Yeah, there's certainly lots and lots and lots of folks want to become MDs and DOs, and it's generally a good career in the sense that you help a lot of people, hopefully, and you through your training and through your licensing, you become capable of doing a lot. And everybody knows somebody, has family members and friends who, I'm alive because of this doctor. And that's certainly, I think that society broadly still has a tremendous amount of respect for physicians broadly. And nobody's ever going to dethrone firefighters and nurses, but people generally respect physicians. And of course it affords you a comfortable lifestyle. In terms of your income, most physicians don't worry about putting food on the table for their kids, and most of them are able to enjoy a nice retirement. And so it's a very desirable thing. And the bottom line is that there are a lot of good medical schools in the United States that see many thousands of applicants every cycle and are only able to pick 150. I mean, I think, what is it, the CU School of Medicine, the most recent numbers I saw is that we're getting like 10,000 applicants a year. And ultimately our class is going to be 175 students at the Anschutz Medical Campus and 14 here in Fort Collins. I think probably the most important thing for folks that want to go to medical school to realize is that it's tough. And a lot of who gets into medical school and who doesn't get into medical school is predicated on, talent, predicated on hard work. But there's a lot of people who, in my opinion, when I look at their scores and their body of work on paper, deserve to become a physician, but don't get in because the world isn't fair. And so I think that one of the things that needs to be done in this country is increase funding for institutions to be able to provide more training to more physicians and have better opportunities for more residencies, because a lot of times residency limitations are cited as a bottleneck in the production of physicians. But you can't just magically put a bunch of money into training for residencies and put a bunch of money into medical schools, because it takes a long time to produce somebody who's going to apply to medical school. And so you see a point in this country now where a lot of people, quote, don't have what it takes to get into medical school, unquote. Well, yes, because they had to work 20, 30, 40 hours a week the entirety of their undergraduate career to help their family put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to study, get an A on everything when you're working 20 hours a week. They don't have the MCAT. Well, we all know that MCAT prep courses can oftentimes bump your MCAT score by 6, 8 points. And that's the difference between getting into medical school or not. Well, those prep programs cost thousands of dollars, and a lot of people don't have thousands of dollars.
It's very pay to win at a lot of points. I mean, the application process, even going to end up spending around $3,000.
Yep.
Just through secondaries. That's not even interviews.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and then if depending on how many places offer you an interview, it'll be another, not $3,000, but just potentially $10,000. Hopefully it won't be anywhere near that.
I'm hoping there's just some virtual online. As much as I prefer the face-to-face, if I could save a couple grand by doing it online.
And a lot of medical schools have gotten a lot better about offering virtual interview options, recognizing that this helps students that are coming from, more modest socioeconomic status backgrounds be more competitive. And I really appreciate those types of things. But even still, I mean, in this country, your chances of getting into a good undergraduate institution are hinged large part about where'd you go to high school. And in most parts of the United States, the quality of the high school is a product of
funding,
property tax,
and
millages. And so, rich, middle class and upper middle class and upper class folks have access to resources from day one that folks who are poor don't. And so, one of the things that I think is, again, the internet drives these wedges between people, and they talk about how there's different types of minority groups are overrepresented in medical school. My dad just sent me an article from the Wall Street Journal in which this, rich person was saying that there's still too many minorities being let into medical school. And I'm like, this is yet again a distraction from the fact that what's really happening is that not enough people who are poor get into medical school because they're systematically disadvantaged from the day they're born.
Yeah.
And it's race, sexual orientation, things like that, in my mind, are those are distractions to keep people from focusing on the fact that they are in many ways economically exploited.
Yeah. I mean, for me as well, I think the socioeconomic spectrum is a far more important spectrum than the other, how would you say, underrepresented and disadvantaged groups, because the latter is almost more, I mean, it's an incorrect variable that's trying to control for the former.
We're white guys. We can't ever know what it's like to grow up as Hispanic or African American. But I can tell you right now that in the United States, if you are wealthy, you get advantages that people who are not wealthy don't have, and that is regardless of the color of your skin. Whether that's makes up for is more important than or whatever, I don't know if that's a productive discussion to have. I mean, the bottom line,
I don't know if we're mature enough to have that discussion yet.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that money is important, and it increases your chances of being able to get into medical school. And so with the recent passage of the big, beautiful bill in DC, which is going to have major changes to the way that people fund their medical school experience, you start running the numbers, and it's like the cost of becoming a lower paid specialty, so like a pediatrician or a family medicine doctor, is going to continue to increase to the point where you're going to take out so much money in student loans to become a pediatrician, and then your salary is going to be, I mean, it's more than the average American makes by a long shot, but
stacked against 500,000 in debt.
Right. If you're making 180, 200K a year, but you got to send 3,500 to 4,000 a month to your student loan processor, why would you do it? Why would you even bother to do it? Because you want to help people. Yeah, you want to make a difference. Yeah, you think biomedical science is fascinating, but if the deal economically just doesn't make sense, then you don't do it. I think it's interesting because a lot of chatter with the physician community is that this is going to make it even more difficult to recruit into primary care specialties, to the point where the majority of people going into primary care are probably going to come from at least middle class families. In other words, this is going to be a affluent person's game, and joke is, always has been. Because even to this day, you see a disproportionate number of people going into family medicine who are coming from already maybe not rich, but certainly more comfortable middle to upper middle class backgrounds.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones who can afford to, because they probably got help from their family and road to getting their board certification in pediatrics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think medicine in general just suffers from that, like across the board, because how much is an undergraduate degree? Like if you get loans or if you get scholarships, very helpful. Take those away though, $100,000 in state school, 4-year degree.
Well,
Add MCAT plus prep, that's another couple thousand. Applications, couple more thousand. Interviews, thousands and thousands. Like plus housing to go to college. I mean, it could feasibly be up to $200,000 before you even get into med school.
Yeah, I was just running looking at some of these numbers from like the passage of the Big Beautiful Bill, and how they're going to, it's instead of getting federally subsidized loans, you're going to end up having to get private loans, and you'll be able to get them because a physician is a good investment.
Yeah.
But it's going to cost more money for the people who take out those loans.
Like higher interest rates?
Yeah, it's effectively what it is, because the federally subsidized loans hover around like 7 or 8%, and they have for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas private loans are going to be in the ballpark of like 13, 14, 15%.
Gosh.
So the best
That's
case,
like a mortgage, for med school.
It's worse than a mortgage.
Yeah.
Because mortgages right now over at Canvas Credit Union, whose name is on our football stadium, you can get a mortgage for 7-8%. As the last time I looked at.
Yeah, that's so much worse than mortgages. So, but the amount of money is almost similar. $250 for med school.
Dude.
Yeah.
I was looking at, if you are a bright, hardworking young person in the state of Colorado, and you end up going to Colorado State University on in-state tuition, and then you end up going to the CU School of Medicine on in-state tuition, you're still running a total student loan debt north of $300,000. And the current relatively good federally subsidized student loan rate, you're looking at a monthly student loan repayment of $2,600 a month every month for 30 years. Now, you become an anesthesiologist and your starting salary is like $350,000 a year. That student loan payment is very manageable. And it's something, but again, here in Fort Collins, $2,700 a month is a mortgage payment on a nice home.
Yeah.
Maybe in Boulder County, I don't know if you could swing a home for that much. Probably not at this rate.
No, definitely not.
But if you're that same student and you choose to do your undergrad here in Fort Collins, at CSU, and then you choose to get an MBA either through CSU or through CU Boulder, your student loan repayment every month for 30 years is $1,400. And you're starting your career earlier, so you're making money sooner. And you might not, MBAs who make $350K a year, like an anesthesiologist, are not as common as, physician. But, as an MBA, you got a very good chance of earning what a pediatrician earns or a family medicine doctor earns by the time you're 40, which is about when a lot of, folks are done with, they're done in their early or mid 30s. But the point is that the economic calculus of going to medical school is something that if you are interested in going to medical school, you have to sit down and you have to be realistic with yourself, because most people who can get into medical school are going to succeed no matter what career path they choose, because they're smart and they work hard. And there's a lot of ways that you can help people outside of being a physician or even being in healthcare. And there's a lot of ways that you can do good and you can earn a good living and you can have a respected job. And so, I think that I hate to be a stick in the mud or a wet blanket, but my best advice for people who want to go to medical school is to look long and hard at the numbers and in the mirror and say, really?
Yeah.
But once you do make that decision, yeah, get A's, get B's, get more A's than B's, don't get C's, and make sure that you are making good connections with people who can mentor you through that process of succeeding academically, and try to get the resources to make sure that you're taking advantage of MCAT prep courses. And the bottom line is that each medical school is going to be looking for a different profile candidate, and there's only so much that you can reasonably do to make yourself that appealing. Good grades get you in, keep the door open. High MCAT keeps the door open. Having experience in a research lab, especially to the point where if you have presented at a national conference with a poster or a talk, or you've even been an author on a peer-reviewed paper, those things all look good. Lots of students say they spend lots of time volunteering, and in some medical schools that's really important, and in other medical schools they don't care. Like, I don't care if you've volunteered 1 million billion trillion hours as an undergrad. If your MCAT is too low, you are not getting in. And that's just the way that it is, because the MCAT is a good predictor of success on step one, and they want to make sure that you pass step one, because that's important for their retention of their accreditation from the liaison committee on med ed. And so
it's been very interesting for me doing the secondaries, seeing what things that they value, and they say that they value, and they want to hear about how your values line up with their values, obviously. Because they're all so different. Some schools are more leadership, some are more service, some just want to hear, like, tell us about a challenge you've overcome. That's a big one. And I'd say I've been, like, pretty pleasantly surprised. I mean, there's some stuff where I'm like, really? Like, that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, when you go apply for jobs for the rest of your career, it's going to be the same way too.
But no, I mean, I think a lot of them are trying to, it's so tough, right? I mean, I've gotten really philosophical about it, because when you're writing these applications and applying, they're almost controlling for someone who can tell a good story, which you don't need to be able to be a good storyteller to become a doctor. Yet, if you want to stand out in your essays, you have to be a little bit punchy, be a little interesting, so that they'll remember you. It's just super interesting to see the dynamic of that, and how, okay, as a medical school applicant, I'm incumbent on being a good storyteller to get into med school, which seems a little funky, but I'm guessing that's what interviews are for as well.
I think that physicians who are good storytellers or good narrators are good physicians.
That's true as well.
One of the most important things that a physician does is explain to the patients, this is what is going on, and this is your story so far, and this is what we are going to do. And you have options. You need to be able to explain those options. And
that's true.
This is your story so far. These are your paths. It's like those old pick your own adventure books. I don't know if they still had those when you were younger.
I've heard of them. I didn't have them, but yeah.
They had for you, students your age, just click your own adventure books. And so I think that being able to communicate like that is extremely useful for a physician. But then again, I mean, being a good communicator is the foundation of any sort of successful professional career. MBAs have to be able to communicate. I certainly have to be able to write really well in order to do what I do well. I think that ultimately I go back and forth. Do medical schools need to be as picky as they are? And then sometimes I think they aren't picky enough. And so I think that it's a difficult to be on the admissions committee side. I mean, I've been there and I've interviewed hundreds of students, and there were things that I always really liked to hear, and there were things that I generally, when I heard, I was like, I don't know. And they are different, and that's helpful. But again, costs money. And if you're from Colorado, you got one option for public in-state tuition.
And even that's not very cheap.
And if you're from Wyoming, you've got one option. And, if you're a hardworking, young, bright person in Wyoming, your only option is going out to Seattle. We'll talk about it. That's for folks coming from Wyoming to go into the Washington,
bit of a culture
Washington,
shock.
Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, and Idaho, the WWAMI program. It's like, how are you able to adjust to different cultures? How are you being able to move across the country to a place that's very different than where you're from?
Wyoming and Seattle are pretty damn disparate.
I've spent a lot of time in Wyoming, and I've spent a bit of time in Seattle, and yes, they are quite a bit different. both have their pros, both have their cons. Fortunately, there's good beer in both. So
That's
when I
important.
visit, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, medical school is certainly it's a very different ball game than when you're interested in applying to anthropology PhD programs.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's very different. I remember when my sister applied to medical school, and it's a lot of pressure about grades and a lot of pressure about the MCAT, and ultimately you just hope that you do something that has stood out in a way.
Mhm.
But yeah, the more mentors and the more outside expert advice you can get from people earlier, even starting senior year of high school, about where you go to college and what you do when you get there, and especially your first year of college. And one of the things that's kind of a bummer about teaching bio BMS 345 at CSU is by the time students get me, they're juniors.
Mhm.
And I've had a number of people that I've taught in BMS 345 email me and let's talk about going to med school. And I ask them what their GPA is, and I tell them you're not getting into the CU School of Medicine.
Yeah.
Sorry, your GPA isn't good enough. It's not high enough. And I don't, I appreciate the fact that you had extenuating circumstances X, Y, and Z, but it won't matter. And so then it's a different conversation.
Yeah. Maybe in those ways it could be interesting to see if med schools were a little bit more lenient, but it's hard.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I always found very compelling is students that had lower average GPAs because they had catastrophic or very poor first years,
Mhm.
and then they had a steady trajectory upwards. And I just point blank asked the student, "Were you partying?" And most of the time, it'd be like, "Yeah." So tell me about that experience, learning how to grow up and how to,
Yeah.
maintain a social life while doing better academically.
I mean, I've had some med schools ask like that exact
Yep.
question. Have you had an upward GPA trend?
Yeah.
And then explain if so. I think if you're able to do it gracefully and like compellingly, I think that could be a valuable thing. Or if you just had like a really very extenuating surgery, family member dying,
Yep.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
Working multiple jobs.
it's the problem with averages, and a student with a 3.5 who started off with all 4 points and then finished off with all 3, it's going to be a problem when they get to med school, because what their GPA trend indicates is they struggled more and more as the material got harder and harder. Well,
Yeah.
med school will be harder than anything I've ever done as an undergrad. Whereas a student who's got an average 3.5 who started off with a 3-point because they were an 18-year-old who played video games too much and never went to class, but then finished off with a 4-point because then they were a 22-year-old who realized, I got to actually do my job.
Mhm.
And they did better and better as the courses got harder and harder. They're going to be great in med school because they have demonstrated that they continue to work harder and harder and harder as the course material gets more and more difficult.
Yeah.
It's MCAT. Every medical school says that the application is more than an MCAT, and that is true at every medical school. But the bottom line is that the research is really clear that if you score under 500 on the MCAT, you have a very increased risk of not being able to pass USMLE Step 1.
Mm.
And, medical schools interviewing people in terms of their GPA and their MCAT is all about, can you pass STEP?
Yeah.
Interviewing you about what your hopes are and what your dreams are and what you want to accomplish in society is making sure that you're like a good human person who is also smart enough to do the material, because we want physicians to be good people, not just smart
Robots,
people, but good people.
Yeah.
Smart. We got robots that can be smart.
Yeah.
In some ways.
The way I've come to think about it is MCAT and GPA get you in the door. You need them to get in. They won't get you in. The essays, who you are, your experiences will increase your chances. And then whether or not you're just simply a fit for the med school and you happen to have someone on the committee like you seems to be the final thing.
And I've been in a lot of committee meetings where somebody really goes out of their way to advocate on behalf of a student, and the student gets in as a result of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having somebody that's on the committee, that's in the classroom, or that's in the discussion, or is part of the interview process, who sees something in you, sees potential in you, is really important.
Yeah,
that's important in grad school. That's important in business world.
That's important everywhere.
That's important in a lot of places.
Yeah. You have to know people and
got to get somebody who's impressed by you and advocates on your behalf.
Exactly.
Lord knows my career has massively benefited from that.
Yeah.
So
it's all about connections, networking, who you know, and just having a community and people you face to face, I think,
Yep.
is the thing that is, most important.
Yeah,
Can
so
help
one of the topics in medicine and in academia and everywhere is what are the chances this job gets replaced by an AI? And I think in a lot of cases, people are probably more concerned that they need to be, because ultimately humans want to deal with other humans. They don't want to deal with a machine.
Yeah.
And
I think in healthcare too, everyone's worried.
I think
when's it gonna
especially in
take it?
healthcare.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why nurses are very, very frequently more well-liked and more respected by society than doctors is that when you go into a healthcare setting, the chances are you're going to spend more time with that nurse than you are with that doctor.
Yep. And nurses have not always, but often better people skills, because
Yeah.
that's a big part of their job. Whereas doctors, it's be smart,
Yeah.
do the thing more so. But
The smarter you get, the harder it gets to be able to relate to the average person.
yeah,
I mean, it's just the bottom line. The further away from average you are, the harder it is to be able to relate to that.
yeah. But it's an
Yeah.
important skill. Well, Dr. Throckmorton,
Yeah.
you are amazing.
Yeah.
I always love talking to you.
We ended
Great
up talking
insights.
very little about human evolution, but that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
state of
what
the world
beers
medicine.
are for.
That exactly. But no, thank you for coming on. This was a great time, great conversation.
It's been my pleasure, Jack.